Hey there, trainers, and thanks for joining us here this week on another episode of Future Sight, which is, of course, a Soundproof podcast production, and as you well know, we are Soundproof Podcast. My name is Brendan. I'm joined, I gotta rephrase this again. Jake is joined by me again this week in his studio. We're doing another episode of Soundproof Live here. And we've got a fun episode this week from the most recent regional championship, which was Fort Wayne.
Yeah, studio is a very generous way to describe this room.
You're welcome.
Just my, we'll call it that. Yeah, this one's from Fort Wayne. It's going to be top 8, one of the 2 top 8 matches we showed, but 2 players that I think everyone that's been involved in the community knows by now, especially if you've been following recently, because a certain Justin Tang has been kind of running through every regional he attends.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny that you say that everyone should know by now, but really it's like you would only know if
right.
you've been following for the last month.
It's literally been a month.
Right, so Justin Tang is one of our players who has basically an unprecedented run of events at this point, and he's facing off against Nails in top 8 of this tournament, which is Nick Navarre.
Yeah.
And again, as we're talking about people who know what's going on in the community, as Jake is saying, Nails should mean something to you at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's won multiple regionals. He's top 8'd NAIC before. Known for being a very, very creative team builder, too. I think anytime that he shows up to a tournament he's like actively been like working on and like practicing for, he's got a team that I don't think anyone else could have ever come up with. And Stealth Rock Tinglu, I think, is one of those kind of teams.
Yeah, I think he's very well known for his team building, and especially kind of as it relates to his own play style.
Yeah.
Where he's known as being like a very slow player, playing defensive teams. And if you were to put one player to me, like, oh, who do you think is going to like cut a regional with Stealth Rocks first?
Yeah,
I feel like this is
easily.
a safe bet.
Yeah.
After all, he does have OU in his tag.
This is true.
So we'll throw some teams up there. Of course, these players both are here in top 8. And you'll see off to the left side there, which is Nails' team, has, you know, a pretty like list of usual suspects. Like, we're pretty used to seeing all these Pokemon that are up there, with a couple of exceptions as far as usage. And I think the one that jumps out to me most is that the Dondozo is not joined by its sushi friend.
Yeah, it's also not even unaware. I kind of figured that if you were running solo Dozo, you'd probably still run unaware just to kind of have something to do in the mirror. But it's Water Veil instead, which is kind of cool. But I think it's neat. Like, the way that he described it in his interview after his match is that you force a lot of switches with Yon Dondozo, and you just capitalize on that with Stealth Rock. And Dondozo, I think he described it as like very similar stat-wise to Snorlax, just for kind of a comparison, because I think I've only ever had a concept of Dondozo, but +2 and everything, before this weekend. And so if you need something to kind of harken back to in terms of how much damage should this be doing and how much should it be taking from things, Snorlax is kind of a good comparison.
Just with the special and physical
right,
reverse.
right.
Yeah, and I kind of found it interesting because it seemed as though even without Tatsugiri, it was kind of used similarly in a lot of like Dondozo endgames to the teams that actually did have Tatsugiri, where like there are a lot of teams out there now that utilize like Amoonguss plus like X for basically creating a defensive position that Dondozo can't break, and you get these like sort of slow, drawn out endgames where it's residual damage, Dondozo is protecting and using leftovers, that kind of like endgame sort of presents itself even in the absence of Tatsugiri. You just don't really have the same offensive option. And then the one other thing to kind of highlight on this team is, of course, that Tinglu is using Stealth Rocks, which, we all know what it does, but it's basically just kind of never been, it's been a non-starter in VGC forever.
Yeah, even in like most doubles formats, Stealth Rock was only kind of a very late like Sun and Moon addition to the metagame. It's been pretty similar. It's been pretty steady since then in like 6v6 doubles. But I think the move slots are so much more valuable in VGC, and the games don't last as long, more importantly. And a lot of times you just don't get value from Stealth Rock. But I think if you're doing something like this, Yon is something that forces a lot of switches. Spec Skull Dingo, Ban Dragonite force a lot of defensive switches. Like, it kind of makes sense just looking at Nick's team, because there's a lot of times you don't want to be sitting on the field against these things.
Right, definitely. And over on the other side, Justin Tang is running a team that has a lot of the same elements of the team that he's been utilizing in Series 2, where he does kind of have that the classic Fire, Water, Grass core that utilizes Amoonguss, Arcanine, and Palafin, which has been seen on a lot of teams. And he also has the Flutter main, but he does have a brand new offensive mode that is brought to you courtesy of Regulation C.
Yes, the Qian Pao is really strong, especially with the Dragapult and the Palafin, just because doing 25% more damage on a lot of damage already is like big. It's multiplicative. So if you're doing a ton of damage, you multiply it by like 125%, and it's really scary. And Qian Pao has a lot of damage output itself. The Dragapult is also something that doesn't really get played a lot. I think that the bane of it, or not the bane, the whole point of Dragapult in theory is that you're faster than Iron Bundle, which is not easy to do. The issue is that a lot of them are still booster energy, which it's not on this end. Or it's Sash Bundle on this end for Nick. However, the Fluttermane is speed boosting booster energy, so it's the same kind of issue. I guess in this case, since it's Terra Steel, like you're actually pretty solid into Fluttermane. But in a lot of cases, you kind of have to Terrastalize against it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it was kind of something that people sort of thought we'll call it Series 0, was going to see a lot of usage because of the place that it sits with its speed tier, which is faster than all of the Ruins and
Paradox.
The relevant Paradox, and especially Bundle and Fluttermane, but it didn't end up seeing usage basically because of booster energy. Is where that kind of like eliminates what it could have done. So it's cool to see it here, and I believe we get to see it in this set, which is pretty cool, quite a bit. And it's interesting also that I remember seeing Justin say on Twitter that basically this was a Pokemon that wasn't really relevant in its run for most of the tournament, but shows up big time in this set.
And I don't think it showed up in like top 4 finals either.
This was its moment.
This just happened. Like if you just look at this matchup, it actually looks like a really solid matchup for Dragapult.
With the exception of the speed boosting bundle, Fluttermane.
Yeah, but even then, like if you do Terrastalize it, you're not taking a whole lot of damage from it. The Flutter is Icy Wind. It was Moonblast, Shadow Ball, Icy Wind. And also the reason you like Dragapult is Clear Body. Because the Icy Wind will do no things. Like, in no case will you ever be slower than Bundle on this team, which is really nice.
So interesting, like, very specifically good into this team.
Yeah.
Alright, well, let's roll it. And two very opposing leads with, like, a very offensive lead from Justin's side and, like, the defensive lead on Nick's side. Which seems to be, as far as you can kind of tell from the team construction, his, like, I'm going to set up Stealth Rocks and make you switch around.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty easy, too. Like, not a lot threatens KO on both Ting-Lu and Dondozo on turn 1. I don't think that's a smart protect, too, because you know that nothing gets yawned off the bat. Phantom Force, I think the Phantom Force Revealer means that Ting-Lu doesn't really have to care about the Dragapult unless it switches out back in, but even then, Qian Pao probably 2 KOs it. I believe this one's Lumberry. Yeah, it's Lumberry, so you don't have like a Citrus or like a Pinchberry or anything if you take an Ice Spinner. I don't know. I think this combination of Qian Pao Dragapult is just a lot of offense up front. Running into Dondozo's kind of sucks though, just because Dondozo has massive defense, and on a team like this, I'm pretty confident that Dondozo is not going to be like max Adamant or something like that. It's probably just like Bull or Impish or whatever.
But he basically sets up this position where he can go for like a strong double target into Ting-Lu on turn 2. And then it just survives it. Which I was really surprised about. Like, this is an insane amount of damage that's being thrown at it. And then because Ting-Lu is so bulky, Nails gets to go ahead and just like immediately take a knockout onto Qian Pao.
Yeah, that's really nice. Like, I honestly would have expected that to KO if I was Justin or Nick in that case. And I think that's a smart target from Justin there, just because you do set up that double target. And the Phantom Force would have gone before the Ice Spinner, or did go before Ice Spinner. So if the Ting-Lu did protect there, it just gets broken. So you're guaranteeing damage into that slot. And nothing really wants to switch into that either if you just look at Nick's team. So I think it's smart. It just didn't pay off, and now you're in kind of a really bad spot.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's possible that like that could be like a 2-move roll. Yeah. And the way that Justin kind of like confidently went for it makes you think that he probably thought that he was going to get that KO, else he wouldn't bother with this lead at all, knowing that this is like probably a lead that Nails has been using all day, but because it's able to survive, that like basically it flips the game on its head. And it is really tough to go back to that well, I think, if you're Justin, like for the rest of the set.
Yeah, especially I think maybe you could even think that a lot of Ting-Lu are more especially defensive. Yeah. Like to just stack on the ability, but in this case you're not even Assault Vest, so maybe just throw more investment in defense there. But like at this point, what's Arcanine doing? Like you can like Flare Blitz the Ting-Lu to kill it, but I don't know, you like can't do anything to Dondozo because it is Water Veil. You can't burn it to inflict damage. Like, it is entirely worthless into Dondozo.
Right, yeah. So this is the players are kind of at an impasse, but I think one of the things about Dragapult here is, especially when it's locked into Phantom Force, is that you can't switch anything into it.
Yeah.
Like it's targeting the Ting Lu slot, and Ting Lu's going to go down next turn. You have the opportunity to kind of like yawn it when it comes back, but there's no saving what's in that slot. Like you can't switch Fluttermane into it. You can't switch. You don't want to switch like a bundle into it, even though it'll take the attack. You don't really want to switch Dragonite into it.
No.
And you definitely don't want to switch
for
Goldengo into it. So there's just like really nothing. Especially knowing that there's like a Fluttermane in the back for Justin that you can switch in and give away that much damage.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what this team is probably meant to do on Justin's end, is just get a lot of damage out up front with that Dragapult Chanpao combo, and then come in with something like the Fluttermane. It is the special attack booster on that Fluttermane. So that kind of makes sense, especially if you're not playing towards a Palafin game, like a Palafin endgame, which certainly are not here. There's no way the Palafin hasn't been revealed if it's trying to come to this game at all. So I think it makes sense. Finally knocking out that Ting Lu. I guess that helps for the Fluttermane down the line if that's the fourth for Justin, which I think it is in this game. But at the same time, like, you're still not breaking this Dondozo. The Phantom Force did less than half, and you can pretty easily just get some leftovers recovery through that.
Yeah, and I think kind of the way that you have to play against Dondozo, especially because at -1 we see that it's like barely to a KOing Arcanine.
Yeah.
It's just like let it sit there.
Yeah.
And I believe that he probably doesn't have it this game, but like if it yawns you, it's kind of like, I don't know, there's no Stealth Rocks up, like you still have the freedom to switch around. So like the scariest thing that it can do to you is take 2 turns to put you to sleep, and there's like enough that Justin has available to him that he can play around it.
I think the issue with Pult in this case though is that since it's locked into Phantom Force, like if you get yawned on a turn where you come out of the shadows or whatever and then attack, you have no option to do damage before you switch or go to sleep. Like sometimes if you get yawned, there's still a reason to like stay on the field and go for one more attack. Or you literally cannot be productive in this case because you have to take that first turn to charge and then you just go to sleep and don't get the move buff anyway.
Yeah, it's a really interesting interaction between like 2 turn moves.
Right.
Or it's kind of like if you're like 2 things are phantom forcing each other. There's like that like sort of weird 2 turn interaction with them. But we're gonna see the Terra Steel from Justin's Dragapult, which as Jake talked about in the pregame here is really important specifically for taking on this Fluttermane. Where before you get yawned, you get the opportunity to kind of like go for the Phantom Force. And wait, he took the yawn last turn, didn't he? The Dragapult?
No, I think didn't it Liquidation?
Oh, Liquidation, yeah. So you get to basically just survive the Shadow Ball, and honestly, even after terrestrializing,
it looks like it might not have KO'd.
Way less damage than I thought it was going to do.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that like Shadow Ball doesn't even KO bulky Fluttermanes in response. So it's kind of interesting, like an interesting matchup. But so it's just going to get, again, to go for a Phantom Force into this Fluttermane slot, and there's not really anything that Nails can do about it because we saw that he has Goldengo in the back. That's going to get knocked out too.
Yeah. The extremes to be there into the Flutter makes sense just because you you catch the bundle coming in if that's what the fourth thing is. You break the sash. Yeah. And so again, listen, Arcanine is not doing anything to this Dondozo, so that just makes sense. You get the I keep wanting to call it Mischievous. I know it's not Mischievous.
It is not.
It is a Fluttermane.
It is very much
not. It is a old large Mischievous. But you always make sure, like, the Mischievous gets KO'd or anything else that swaps in. You break multi-scale if the Dragonite comes in, you break the sash for the bundle, so.
Right, and then this is kind of where Nails gets into his best position at the game, I think.
Yeah.
Where he has yawned onto Dragapult, which Justin is now forced to either let go to sleep and allow his entire world to take a Specs Make It Rain, or basically try and switch something in for it.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about earlier just happened with the Dragapult Phantom Force, and then got yawned at the same time. So like in this case, I don't think we know what the fourth is for Justin. I don't remember what the fourth is for Justin.
It's Flutter, isn't it?
I think so. But now, like, Make It Rain is going to go off here, and it's, like, Terra Water is a very easy choice here just to dodge damage from the Flare Blitz. And so you're either taking a knockout on whatever comes in, regardless. It's either a Moongus or Flutter, realistically, if you're Nails, because it's not going to be Palafin. But neither of those things wants to take a Make It Rain.
Nope.
And if the Dragapult stays on the field, there's no damage from that slot for at least 3 or 4 turns. So it's kind of a win-win here, even if you're down to your last 2 and you're locking into Make It Rain. With 2 Pokemon left, you're just going to keep blowing your special attack. At this point, you don't really need to be at neutral special attack for the rest of this game.
I think it's just really interesting to watch Nails play teams that he builds because, and I was saying this at some point, I forget to who, maybe it was on this show, that like really good Dondozo players were playing 2 end games that their opponents don't know about, and I feel like that when Nails is playing, is that he's got like Stealth Rocks, and then these sort of like yawn end games with like solo Dondozo are not things that any player is prepping for this regional is playing against.
I had a friend that was like just playing for fun on the ladder, and I'll call him out. It was tennis ace. He was playing on ladder, and he messaged me. He's like, "I just lost to this stupid solo yawn Dondozo." And then after this stream this weekend, he was like, "Oh my god, it was Nails," which I think is so funny.
You at least feel a little bit better about it. Yeah. So here's the yawn interaction, and Dragapult is going to attempt to Phantom Force, but instead is just going to stay asleep, and it's going to, I believe, take a liquidation for its triples as well. So with I believe just he's gonna go for the yawn to cover the switch.
At that point you don't really need the liquidation. Like you catch the Arcanine switch, or like you catch a possible Amoonguss with a yawn or something, and then knock out the Arcanine or the Flutter if it comes in. So I think just it's one of those like playing so you don't throw end games because you have it locked up already. So you may as well just make sure that you're not doing anything that can like possibly lose that 100%.
Right. Yeah. So this is you have to double target something and hope the Dragapult wakes up, and it's going to take you 2 turns to get there. So eventually Nails is going to be able to seal this up with like a Make It Rain, or honestly it's still really hard to break Dondozo at this point. I don't know, I think it's more possible now with the Flutter, because something like a Moonblast does a lot of damage. I don't know if Justin loses this game if the Dragapult stays asleep there. If it wakes up, well, especially because based on how much damage that does.
So it's a booster special attack.
I didn't think it could KO Goldengo from that spot.
I mean it's booster special attack, and so we're going to see how much Moonblast does, because I'm pretty sure it survives this Heavy Slam. So then if you got an extra turn of Phantom Force this turn, I think you might have been able to win
you
this.
actually do.
But in this case, you now have only you're only going to get 1 Phantom Force off as opposed to 2, and that could make up the damage difference.
I didn't think that the Goldengo was going to get knocked out. I don't know why.
I didn't
my
either.
memory of it is something, but a Moonblast actually just knocks it out, which is pretty crazy. I always still underestimate Fluttermane after already having watched it for several months. It still does so much damage, but at this point, Justin's basically gonna get, well, if it wakes up, he can get 2 attacks into it, because Fluttermane gets knocked out here this turn most likely. So he does wake up, so he's gonna get the opportunity to go for a Moonblast, and then a Phantom Force the next turn, and then it comes down to whether or not this double target is going to knock Dondozo out, which I don't think it is going to, but
it's
clearly I don't know the damage counts.
Right.
Clearly not.
I don't know, because if you did wake up the prior turn, it would have taken the Phantom Force this turn, and then you could, so I think Justin wins if he gets a 1-turn sleep on that Dragapult, but
well, depending on how much damage this does, but I assume this is like to a KO range for a Phantom Force.
Yeah, you would think.
Oh, it definitely is.
9.
Jeez.
So even without sort
that's
of ruin
so much
too.
damage. I was not expecting Dondozo to take that much damage.
Well, it's one of those things too. Like I think one of the benefits of using Dragapult on a team like this, as opposed to something like Dragonite, like no one knows those calcs.
I don't.
I don't know Choice Band, Phantom Force, or Dragon Dart's calcs.
No.
Like that's something you can pretty easily take advantage of too. Which I'm sure that I don't even know, because Justin did say he didn't like bring Dragapult a lot, but
I think in fairness, in vice versa, not a lot of people are like very familiar with Dondozo calcs without its boosts,
for sure.
So. So going into game 2 here, I think is kind of really interesting for turn 0. And, it's already up on screen, but after watching turn 1 of game 1, I don't think you can really confidently commit to that lead if you're either of these players.
I think if you're expecting that same lead, if you're Nick, I think it's very possible that the Phantom Force Ice Spinner combo was a roll. And even then, you could possibly just go for, like, Ice Spinner Dragon Darts turn 1, and that would probably that should knock out the Tinglu, just based on the Phantom Force damage. And so I like the swap from both. I don't know if I love Dragonite into this team. Like Shenpao's gonna come, Fluttermane's probably gonna come, Dragapult's gonna come. You can't extreme speed that. It seems a little rough to bring. I guess just to threaten a possible Amoonguss, which he did catch in the lead, which was nice. But even then, this Dragapult's still gonna be like, it's a very easy terrestrialization again, because you're probably not going to low kick it turn 1. Actually, no, you don't even have to, because the Flutter doesn't have Dazzling Gleam, so you just Rage Powder. and then probably just knock out the Flutter if you just like Terra Blasted or something. But...
Yeah, and I think it's especially like not very good into Justin's like lead from game 1.
Right.
So you had to like feel pretty confident in that not being the lead.
Yeah, it is multi-scale, which I guess helps a little bit. But even then, Dragapult can just darts you, and then the Ice Spinner goes through. So yeah, and it is banned Dragonite on next end as well. So there's no recourse. You have to swap into something if you're this Dragonite. So
yeah, so I think this lead looks like awesome for Justin.
Yeah,
in that like you can basically just like protect the Amoonguss slot and go for like Terra Steel and do whatever you want with Dragapult.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen in this game.
Is it? Wow, spoilers.
I know. Well, because like you said, like
What's stopping that?
What stops that? Yeah, you Terra Steel here. You're not going to take any damage from the Flutter Mane. And probably not from the Dragonite, because it's Choice Band and going to lock into Terra Blast. And at this point, you can just Terra Steel the Flutter Mane and make sure it doesn't get an attack off beyond like a Shadow Ball into a Moongus or something. Or even just go straight for like a Spore on something like Dragonite if you think that it's not going to go straight for like Terra Blast into Moongus.
Yeah, and I don't remember what Nails has in the back here. I was trying to think, like, was there actually anything that he could have done with his lead against this lead, or did he just kind of, like, lose this game at turn 0?
Right.
But he's going to go ahead and just double into a Moongus, which was, like, maybe, honestly, his best bet is to try and just, like, throw a whole bunch of damage into that slot and hope that Justin gets lazy.
Yeah.
But, first of all, this is really cool animation.
I know.
He goes for the Choice Band, Terra Steel, Terra Blast, which, of course, does have the same type of the stab bonus. It does a pretty like good chunk into multi-scale Dragonite.
I think that's a way smarter target than the Flutter Mane that turn.
Yeah.
Just because the Flutter isn't threatening anything at this point, especially because you didn't get any damage in the Dragapult. That was a really good protect from Justin. And now you threaten a KO on both. It might be a roll on Dragonite, but it's obviously will KO the Flutter Mane. And even though Goldengo resists it, you don't really want it switching in on like anything from a Choice Band Dragapult. And then Bundle that we see in the back also probably goes down to Sash, if not close. And so now you're in an even worse spot if you're not, because both of your Pokemon are being threatened as opposed to just one. And if you try and play defensively, it's really easy to catch that out with a Spore or two.
And I think you get a pretty free switch into Arcanine here, because we've already kind of been underwhelmed by the damage that Flutter Mane is doing right now, which means that like most Arcanine are going to switch pretty confidently into like anything that it could possibly do. And you don't really want to take a Choice Band like Terra Flying, Terra Blast, but it feels a little bit better once it's intimidated.
Yeah. Especially because I think the Terra Blast still goes into Dragonite this turn, too. Again, it's just guaranteed damage. Like, even if this doesn't KO, the Arcanine swap means you have Extreme Speed, which is really nice here. And then, like, on this coming turn, now is probably when you start getting damage into that Flutter Mane slot. I really like just going for the guaranteed damage in these first couple turns, because you fell behind on that pretty quickly in game 1, when you started getting yawned and you lost the Chien-Pao pretty early.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like times we get stuck on like super effective damage in our head, which is like obviously Dragapult is here to be doing super effective damage to Flutter Mane, at least in some capacity. But it just like, and I think this is very heavily informed by how much damage we saw Flutter Mane do in game 1.
Yeah.
But like you don't need to attack it.
Right. I think talking about like concepts of damage, like I think every Flutter Mane we've seen so far, not every, but the majority of Flutter Mane are either like Specs or a Booster Energy special attack, which like both do insane amounts of damage, but Booster Energy speed, it has no like multipliers on like the Moonblast or anything, especially without something like Chiyu or whatever. So really not threatening a whole lot here. And now that the Terra Blasts are in play, like for the Flutter Mane, it just gets dropped and you lose what is normally like your biggest source of damage here beyond the like Goldengo.
And Goldengo does get to come in here for free, but it's still like a little bit of a sketchy position for it, just because Terra's already gone, and it's going to have to take a Flare. Like it's potentially going to have to take a Flare Blitz from Arcanine here. But for Nails, you can just kind of like get into Bundle here, which means at least you get to sort of like pin the Arcanine and have a situation where Goldengo does not have to take a Flare Blitz. But like we know Amoonguss is still in the back, so that's like basically a get out of jail free card.
You pin the Arcanine, but like, do you even get to attack with Bundle? Like, is Extreme Speed, Terra Blast might just.
Does that do enough?
I don't know. It might eat that, but at the same time, like if Goldengo gets to make it rain off, we saw it not KO Dragapult.
Does Dragapult actually do that much damage? That like an E-Speed?
It's strong. I don't know. Especially, I don't know. even without though, like
I'm not doubting you. I'm just like surprised.
Yeah, I think it's
that's
possible
like, because that's not even something I considered.
Right, but like extreme speed Terra Blast, because I mean extreme speed hits kind of hard too.
Yeah, but I think the more likely scenario is you just get into Amoonguss here, right?
Yeah,
and
probably.
you can just protect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Amoonguss does end up just like swapping in here, and Arcanine goes for protect. Yeah, so then this next turn, basically Arcanine no longer has to worry about taking a Hydro Bump.
Yeah, because it's not even Icy Wind. This bundle has Encore instead.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of a situation, if your Nails, where if you had gone for a Freeze Dry into the Dragapult slot, but that's like a really hard play to make, and you can basically only assess that in hindsight. Is like I don't know, like that's a really big read.
I think it kind of makes sense. Like Freeze Dry and Make It Rain certainly knocks it out. So if you're okay with taking a Terra Blast, that's kind of a safer read. But even then, I think you probably want to not take that Terra Blast and keep your Sash up if possible.
Right. So now Arcanine is like going to get the opportunity to go for a Flare Blitz under. Or actually, I think you have to break the Sash here, right?
Yeah, I think so. If you Flare Blitz, I guess it depends on what's in
the back.
Right. Yeah.
Like if it's I almost said Misfortune. Because I was thinking Mismagus, but Fluttermane. If it is Fluttermane, like where did that come from? If it's Fluttermane in the back, then I guess you're like in a position where you don't even need to attack Goldengo.
Right.
So it's going to be a Rage Powder, and Amoonguss is going to trade its life in exchange for either a Flare Blitz or an Extreme Speed likely into the bundle slot.
I think it's probably just Flare Blitz.
I don't think it needs to not be Flare Blitz, right?
Especially because Arcanine going down here is not even bad.
Yeah.
Like you get bundled down to what is clearly Terra Blast range, and if your fourth is the... You can be one to save Magius now. If the fourth is the Fluttermane, then you just get 2 KOs this next turn.
Right.
Like Dragonite's at like 11 HP, was it? And so you outspeed the bundle with Terra Blast, knock it out. Or even Dart. No, you don't Darts, that was stupid. But Terra Blast gets a knockout, and then Shadow Ball clearly knocks out the Goldengo that can't Terra.
And I think even if it's not Fluttermane, that like Chen Pao wins this endgame too. Like a combination of fast offensive Pokemon is like any combination of attacks here is gonna like okay, not any combination of attacks.
I know what you mean,
but like it's very difficult to.
I think if it's Chen Pao, well, yeah, the Goldengo is spec, so it has to attack. I was gonna say I think that Justin's has Sucker Punch as its only.
Oh, okay. So if it doesn't have Throat Chop, then I guess that's an out.
Yeah, it's Sucker with Sacred Sword and Ice
Okay.
But even then, like, it specs Goldengo, and what are you going to unlock him to trick the whole game or something? I don't know.
Probably not. So this is, like, likely just a Terra Blast. Or I guess you could go for Dragon Darts here, right?
I don't know that one Dart KOs the bundle is the issue.
Oh, okay.
And if bundle gets an attack off, you can lose.
Right.
So Terra Blast is definitely a KO.
And then a Shadow Ball is definitely a KO.
If Goldengo maybe survives a Shadow Ball, then you Dragon Darts, but I don't think there's ever a chance that happens.
But it is just going to switch out. So which misplay is this playing to right
now? Darts maybe? I don't even know. I think at this point the only way that you... is it even playing to a misplay, or is it just getting the special attack drop in hopes that you can survive a Shadow Ball? And get one Make It Rain off and win.
Oh, okay.
I think that's probably what it's going for.
Oh, right, probably because Dragapult is not in Make It Rain. Okay, I see.
Yeah, because there was that -1 or 2 at that point, and so I think the out there is hoping that the Shadow Ball barely misses a KO and you getting a Make It Rain off, because I don't think there's any scenario where you would ever double the Goldengo here.
Right.
You always go for the bundle.
And he did go for Darts.
Yeah, he did. I don't know. Maybe he just knows that calc. I don't know how much Dragon Darts does. I'm not going to pretend I do. And so, I don't know though, because the Terra Blast was base 80, and it did barely over half to the bundle. Oh no, that's Flare Blitz. That was a Flare Blitz.
No, it's a Flare Blitz. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you're just super confident that KOs, and even if it doesn't, like Green picks it up.
Because we saw it do. The only frame of reference we have for it is we saw it do like 60 to 70% to Dragonite.
Yeah.
Right, because it hit it after a multi-scale.
Right.
So I guess it does KO. And then obviously that basically removes all doubt from whether or not this Shadow Ball is going to knock out Goldengo.
I guess with a choice band you can probably be pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure that
the calcs are hard.
You're not running this Dragapult without knowing how much damage you do to bundle. Right?
Yeah.
Like again, we don't have that info, but there's no chance that Justin didn't know that you can close that out with a Dragon Darts.
Yeah, so that ended up being a pretty clean game.
Yeah.
Is like Nail's got a couple knockouts, but I don't think it was ever really that close.
No.
Is that it kind of felt like Justin had it in hand pretty much the whole game. And then... So I don't know if I mentioned it, but I was kind of thinking that before game 2, that if either player is going back to their game 1 lead, it's probably Nails. Like you could, like if you feel good about that survive, then you could probably lead Tinglu Dundozo again and feel pretty good about it. And I think that this is also a much better lead, but like into Dragapult Amoonguss, than what he had come up with in game 2.
Yeah, I think the Chien-Pao in the lead here again would be pretty rough. Although. Like, the Dragon Ball does have U-turn, and this is such a free U-turn.
Yeah.
Like, especially because the worst thing that can happen if you U-turn is it U-turns into Protect and Dozo, like, heavy slams or yawns you. And even if it's yawn, again, you just U-turn out.
And it's also a free Spore.
Yeah, it's a very free Spore unless you want to, like, unless Nick terrestrializes Dondozo immediately, it's Terra Grass. But I feel like Terra Grass Dondozo in this matchup is so far from optimal in terms of getting use out of your terrestrialization that I don't know that you're willing to do that turn 1.
Yeah, I think that like the way that we've seen him play the matchup makes him. We know that the way that he's approaching this is that he needs value out of like either the Terra Water or the Terra Flying to like get enough offense going.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So. I mean, we talk about free U-turns. This is also kind of like if you really wanted to get Stealth Rocks up, now is probably like a good time to do it if you want to try and like go towards that kind of game plan. That would be one way to go. And then this is kind of like I think the turn 2 is really becomes like is what becomes interesting. The turn 1, like not a whole lot happens other than Tinglu takes 1 million damage. But like where the yawn goes, I think really influences how Justin has to play like the next couple turns.
Especially because Stealth Rock does go up here, which I don't think we saw in games 1 or 2. And so now if you are going to make all these switches, because Justin was switching a decent amount already, but especially because the yawns are going to start being thrown out, you do have to worry about that. And I like that he got Arcanine in immediately, because he probably realized I can't knock out this Tinglu. And the Tinglu is 1, faster than Amoonguss, but 2, has a Lumberry, so in no world are you preventing Stealth Rocks that turn. So you get the Arcanine on the field. Not necessarily the best matchups for it, but you can get some decent damage off with the Flare Blitz if you want, and more importantly, you get it in without taking that first 25%.
Right, I think that's the big key, is that he manages to sneak it onto the field like right before Stealth Rocks go up.
Yeah.
And as far as like things that need to be switching around, having Amoonguss be the thing that's switching around is like the lowest value you can get out of like forcing switches because of Regenerator. So if the Yawn had like for some reason gone into the Arcanine slot there, and I'm not really sure that's a play that you make, but like if you had Yawned Arcanine, you're getting like much higher value out of Stealth Rocks.
Especially if you're going to terrestrialize the Dragapult again, like you're going to take not much damage from the rocks, like the resisted damage from the rocks anyway. And I like that Heavy Slam call, one, because I don't know, I mean obviously it's going to switch out, and if the Fluttermane is the one in the back, like you get a lot of value out of it, and now it's in Stealth Rock range, so the Fluttermane can't swap out. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing for her, like Tinglu, Dondozo are 2 things that you kind of want to be throwing like Fluttermane attacks at. But at the same time, like it's almost telegraphed here at this point, so if you switch Fluttermane out, all it is like a sacrifice for a free switch later on, which can be very valuable, but that's a kind of a heavy Fluttermane, heavy slam to take if you're that Fluttermane.
Yeah, and I think getting Fluttermane into this position is like, I think you kind of either have to rely on a Wake Up or trade Tinglu from this position, but you are at a place where like you know that Fluttermane is limited in what it can do, which is specifically important if you have Golden Go in the back.
Yes, that's a good point. So if Golden Go, or if the Fluttermane rather gets knocked out, or at least is forced to swap out, that knocks out. I thought Dazzling... There it is. I thought Dazzling Glaive wouldn't KO it from there. And maybe that's because I'm used to like Assault Vest pellets.
Yeah, it's not Assault Vest. Yeah,
so maybe that crit didn't even matter.
Because it is special attack boosting.
Yeah, it is.
But I think also from the heavy slam damage, it's like pretty bulky, so I don't know how what the special attack investment is. But sorry, what you were saying.
I was going to say, I was talking about Golden Go, because if the Fluttermane goes down, then the only way you have to damage Golden Go, really, if it terrestrializes, is like Phantom Force, or I guess Dragon Darts. And that can be kind of tough, or it can be kind of easy to abuse if you're locking a Dragapult into a move it doesn't really want to be locked into. Especially because, again, the Mischievous, the Fluttermane's days are numbered with the Stealth Rocks now, and the Arcanine also doesn't really want to be switching in and out. But and Cursed, it's Mischievous now. Yeah, it's just Mischievous.
It's Mischievous. We're looking at Nails' back Pokemon there, though, and he actually doesn't have Golden Go. Which is this a didn't he bring Golden Go game 1 even with this like with the bulky lead he had Golden Go in the back?
Yep.
Yeah, I think this would be a way better position for him, based on the way that the first 3 or 4 turns went if there was still Golden Go in the back.
Because I think if you have a Golden Go, you just plop it in now and like terrestrialize and make it rain, and you have to take a lot of damage without a few Justin. That's kind of also the nice thing about Stealth Rock is that Arcanine no longer takes like 30 from Make It Rain, it takes 55, but you just can't do more than once, obviously.
Right.
And so I was kind of surprised to see Dragonite be brought at all again, just because it really didn't. It was entirely unproductive in game 2, and it felt like what 4 Justin brought are just kind of the best equipped for Dragonite regardless. So I think Golden Go would have made a lot more sense here, but maybe there's just a line Nick saw that I'm just not coming up with.
It's possible, or like at a very surface level thought that he just has like kind of a fear of a Mungus sitting around for too long, which is completely valid fear. Like we've all been terrorized by Mungus before. But like we saw in game 2, I believe. Yeah, it was like turn 1 of game 2 where Nails, like, well, for the first time, and here's the second time, just like like tries to like, is there any reason to not like protect there, like both times, but I don't know.
The Dondozo?
No, to protect a Mungus from like the very telegraphed terrifying Terra Blast. And like obviously you're trying to get damage there, and you do a lot of damage to anything that switches in there. Yeah. But like once you break multi-scale and you get Dragonite back on the field, or Dragapult back on the field, like I don't like.
Right. I don't know
what's it doing, I guess.
Because now that multi-scale's broken, I don't know that Dragapult can KO it immediately. Like with Phantom Force, yes. Darts, almost certainly not. So you're going to be able to get a Terra Blast off here. And I like the Arcanine coming in. You kind of have to like pick when your Arcanine comes in now because of the Stealth Wax, but if you're able to like burn the Dragonite, that's huge. One, because of the Amoonguss not getting knocked out by like Terra Blast or anything, but 2, that's kind of the only like damage source left. I think because Flutter was the 4th, right? Yeah. And we've seen Flutter do kind of pitiful damage this whole set.
And there's still like a Terra available.
Right.
Dragapult in the back. And I think you said like you could just burn the Dragonite, but I think you also can just like throw damage at it this turn as well and just put it in range for darts.
Exactly.
So I guess kind of like what Amoonguss does is really the potential here is that like you like that slot is taking 1 million damage regardless of what you do this turn. So I guess like trying to find the best way to mitigate it, or either just like stack Amoonguss into Dragapult next turn is like what you're thinking if you're Justin. Yeah. And mitigate it apparently is the option.
It's like I see it and I don't, because the Dragapult now has to fear the Flutter Mane. It can't Terrestrialize, and if like we saw Shadow Ball do under half to the Steel one, but it's gonna do probably enough to KO. Oh, I forgot about that. It's gonna do enough to KO after Stealth Rocks now. So like you've opened yourself up to a Flutter Mane win. I think you just heavily rely on Amoonguss if you're terrestrializing it here to beat the Flutter Mane, which is kind of scary when the Flutter Mane can just knock out whatever's next to the Amoonguss. Right. And I guess again the benefit is that it doesn't have Dazzling Gleam, so if Amoonguss Dragapult is on the field, like you're not attacking the Dragapult that turn. At the same time, now that you've terrestrialized, you can't attack the Flutter Mane until the following turn. Right. Because all you have is Phantom Force for it. Right. Although I guess actually this burn is huge.
It is or isn't?
No, it is. I think the drop in damage.
Because I'm kind of thinking that it's not.
I think the residual damage is what makes it worse, because a lot of.
Like, you think that wasn't E-speed range?
I mean, I guess it was, but like if you try and you lose like an option to like swap into Flutter Mane to catch an E-speed and try and like preserve the Dragonite. To like force like you have a Phantom Force switch in if the Dragonite sticks around a little longer, because now like
but the Arcanine was just faster than Dragonite anyway though. Yeah. So then you can't switch Flutter Mane.
Oh, that's a good point. You just Flutter Blitz it anyway. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's not a huge deal then, because the Amoonguss regenerates enough.
I'm sure it felt bad in the moment, but like ultimately it doesn't.
I think we even saw Nick just like probably.
I don't think it was wildly impactful.
Yeah. I guess now that the issue is, do I have damage to break Dondozo?
Yeah, without Flutter Mane, yeah.
Yeah, because now you have 2 physical attackers and Pollen Puff as kind of your only ways to damage it. And you have to worry about this Flutter Mane, which can, in theory, like just Moonblast your Dragapult. But it certainly knocks it out.
I mean, there's not any way to prevent like a Phantom Force plus Protect, though, right? isn't.
Well, there is
going
with
down.
the Moonblast because you're faster.
Oh, it's faster.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that.
You almost like have to swap Amoonguss back in here for the
Mhm.
Bolt, and then try and just get damage off or knock yourself out with Arcanine with the
Mhm.
Four Blitz or anything. Because if you lose Dragon Ball here, the
game's over.
immediately
Yeah, there's
over.
no way to throw damage at Dondozo.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go back into Amoonguss here, which is like presumably just going to take very little damage from I almost said it again. From Fluttermane, and actually that does like a little bit more than I expected based on what we saw due to Dragon Bolt.
Yeah.
But obviously that's still not really enough to be threatening Amoonguss. It's going to get to do what it wants the next turn, and you get to just throw a Flare Blitz at it.
Yeah, and now you're in a spot where you can either try to, I don't know, like if you Moonblast, like obviously you can't switch Dragon Bolt in here, but if you like try and protect Fluttermane to wake up the Dondozo and get a yawn off and try and force something out. At the same time, you also can't Moonblast something and protect yourself from Spore on the same turn.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, say for example, the Fluttermane protects now. You don't take the Flare Blitz, and you don't get Spore. Dondozo wakes up and yawns the Arcanine or whatever. If you on the following turn, you can't knock out the Amoonguss. It's gonna get Spored anyway, so you can just swap Dragon Bolt. Or even just let Arcanine go down and swap Dragon Bolt in or something. I think there are ways to get Dragon Bolt on the field. In this case, that didn't happen before because, especially because you can also just Rage Powder and switch. I kind of forgot about that.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, like, what Nails is trying to play to, right, is a position where Amoonguss is asleep, Fluttermane is still alive, and Dragon Bolt is on the field.
Right.
Which is, like, a very specific set of conditions. So, like,
Yeah.
if you are to wake up here and, like, you get a yawn into Amoonguss, then you still need like 2 more protects
I think so
to make that happen. Because of like Amoonguss here, so it protected this turn, so you can like I don't know, like even if you Shadow Ball Arcanine this turn, then Amoonguss is going to Spore you before it goes to sleep, so that pretty much like eliminates that. So you need like another protect here, if the yawn had gone off.
Yes.
For it to fall asleep.
And I guess now you would need 3.
Right.
I guess this is actually just safe for the Rage Powder to just knock out the Fluttermane and not have to deal with like Arcanine going down. And then because if Arcanine goes down here to that Shadow Ball, like sure you Spore the Fluttermane and you get to Phantom Force it in a couple turns, but then you start losing time to like knock out this Dondozo through like Leftovers Recovery.
Yeah.
Or like Phantom Forces and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess already it's kind of like a situation where are you going to be able to get enough damage onto Dondozo? But like ultimately there's just really no way for Dondozo to knock out Amoonguss, I guess.
Right. I don't know, because Amoonguss can't really...
Oh, it doesn't have any recovery.
Yeah, if it stays on the field, it doesn't have any recovery, and Dondozo is probably at -2 or 3 at this point already. And I think at this point, if you're Justin, you just can't... Well, I was going to say, you don't really want to risk like a switch getting like caught out by like a yawn or something, but I forgot the Dragon Ball was so healthy, and again, the Dondozo being at -2 or 3, however many attack.
I think it's 2.
Something like that.
Not that it really matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can pretty easily get this swap in.
Yep.
Just because they're like, what happens if you get yawned? You just swap back out to Amoonguss. If you get heavy slammed, you take 20. Like, I don't know.
Right.
And now you just start throwing out damage.
Yeah. Now the Dragon Bolt's on the field now. You are always locking into Phantom Force here, correct?
Is it Phantom Force or Darts?
No, I mean
Darts does more damage.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I was thinking that you are always locking into Darts, especially because you don't want to mess around with like the yawn interactions where you can like protect, like yawn and protect, and then not have to take damage for potentially like up to 4 turns.
I guess the nice part about Phantom Force would be breaking the Dondozo's protect. So like Darts does marginally more damage, but it probably doesn't matter because you're playing this game out for another 8 turns anyway. So if the Amoonguss comes in, you can like force the protect to break, and you can Pollen Puff it for some more damage or Spore it or something like that. So like, I guess Phantom Force makes more sense. I do think you want to be Flare Blitzing if you're Arcanine. Like, you want to knock yourself out here to give yourself that Amoonguss switch.
To get a free switch.
Because I think, like, you probably still win anyway if you're just extreme speeding and not knocking yourself out, but it makes it so much more simple if you can get a Amoonguss in on the field with a guaranteed, like, no yawn or something like that.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to accidentally take a yawn on the way out. That's so much damage. Like,
I know.
Like, I'm way underestimating Dragon Ball. We saw it in game 1, and I'm still like, what the heck? How is that doing so much damage? But yeah, once Amoonguss gets back in, basically Dondozo has to, like, somehow out-damage side Pollen Puff, I guess, is like what the end game could potentially look like. But yeah, it seems like Nails is playing this to, like, a misplay, which is like accidentally letting Amoonguss go to sleep and it getting like multiple 3-turn sleeps.
Yeah.
And I don't think that even matters at this point with how much damage Phantom Force is doing.
Yeah, how much damage Phantom Force does, and also how little damage the Dondozo is going to do to whatever else. I guess the nice part about keeping Arcanine alive here is that you have the option to like swap Amoonguss in and out for a generator. So that could be a reason to not Flare Blitz and knock yourself out, but at the same time, like, again, even Amoonguss getting yawned here, if you were to swap into like Dragapult, at this point, like, Flare Blitz is slightly out-damaging leftovers, right? So you can just keep swapping that slot.
Until you get a free switch.
And the Dragapult probably has, like, 5 or 6 more rounds of Stealth Rock damage it can take anyway, so it's not like you have to worry about that. Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point it's pretty much sealed unless Justin, like, horribly misplays.
Like, a very weird...
Yeah. At the same time, Nick has, like, less than a minute of your time left, too, so...
So they're, like, multiple lose conditions. We're talking about win conditions, but... Multiple lose conditions. So like a very Nails team. I think it's really cool actually to see Dondozo here, and obviously he's able to take it really far. And while I was watching this set earlier, I was just kind of like, it's really like, not only does he play very slow teams, but he takes like 45 seconds. Well, he's like most turns.
He's like always the last one done. Yeah, like being a slower player, both in terms of like gameplay and actually picking your moves. And I know that he's timed out a few times too, like in tournament.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm not super surprised to see him take as much time as possible. I wonder, like, how many games he actually took to time in this tournament too.
Surely a lot.
I would imagine, like, if anyone did, it's probably him.
Specifically, like we're kind of witnessing like the near occasion of what a time end game could look like. Where like if Dragapult wasn't in the back and you're facing down just these two things that are on the field right now, like with a slightly less offensive Arcanine, you could potentially be out damaging out damaging the leftovers recovery.
Yeah, especially if you're not intimidated too. You manage to come in and out.
Right.
But
oh, he thought about it. We're not done yet.
I'm never seeing that.
We are not done yet. He thought about it, but he is not turning the towel yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we don't really have to talk about this endgame anymore.
I know it's pretty much sealed.
Yeah.
At this point,
so Justin is gonna go ahead and take game 3 eventually here, because I think it might actually be enough on the very next. How much damage? Yeah. So one more. Phantom Force is going to knock it out, which does get Justin into top 4. And then, as we kind of alluded to at the beginning, he does go on to win his second regional championship out of 3 that he's attended.
Crazy. And the third was a top 16.
It's just unbelievable. Yeah. It's like honestly, it's unbelievable.
Your worst?
We've never seen anything like it.
No, definitely not. We barely see people win 2 regionals in a season, much less their first season. Yeah. I think I saw people talking on Twitter about how like the list of people that have won 2 regionals in a season is like I'm blanking already. It's like it's Wolf, it's Zactro, it's Ray has done it, and now it's Justin Tang.
Yeah.
Like imagine like being in that pantheon as soon as you enter the scene.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I saw a couple people talking about it on Twitter too, where we're trying to like compare this to something.
Yeah.
People are like, like Wolf kind of burst onto the scene when he started playing, and then obviously Zactro had like a really good 3 tournament run as well. But like the size and quality of tournaments is like basically incomparable.
Yeah,
like we're seeing what was the attendance at this regional, like
560 something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's the smallest of the 3.
right. Yeah. So like the size of the regional, and then I think pretty much anyone that plays the game will tell you that the quality of the player base overall has basically been going up for a long time at this point, and it's probably continuing to go up as we go, as is evidenced by Justin himself. Like he is a new player that
and another like first time attendee winning a regional like right before this in Vancouver.
So definitely increasing in quality, which like as a brief aside also lends a lot of weight to Wolf as the GOAT.
He's kept
as an argument. Like it's tough to, I mean, I know there are still a lot of Ray truthers, but anyway, that's an argument for another day. But like just the quality of the player base for a new player to come in and take 2 regionals out of 3 that he's attended is just mind-boggling. Like truly mind-boggling.
He's such a good kid too. Like I love this guy.
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to meet him, but I know the Tang gang is big on Twitter. And I assume in Twitch chat.
Probably.
So it's really cool. It's really fun for the game. Oh, there they are. We love storylines. So like this is a lot of fun to watch too, and this is obviously going to be kind of like a huge name as we march towards NAIC.
Yeah, I'm sure that he's very capable of a big NAIC run too, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him like in the heat of like the Day 2 Worlds race. He started obviously he started late. I don't know if he's probably not going to UIC if I had to guess, but this like the whole snowball period he was playing for was NAIC. It's like almost definitely has a travel award to NAIC to get there, and then I honestly don't even know because it's 400 and I forget what top 16 is. Probably around 500 CP.
I just remember it's chaos.
Yeah, so it's probably around 500 CP, and I know that some years the number for Day 2 Worlds has been up in like the 700 or 800s, which is insane. So with one more, I don't know if he's going to another regional, but with an NAIC finish, it's certainly possible for him to make Day 2 Worlds on his first season as well, off of 4 tournaments, much less.
Yeah, and it's just that there's a lot of competition at the top as well, because like even just Nails himself and cut multiple regionals this year, and won one, right? Or he was just
not
top
this
4
year.
He
was
top
top 4,
just top 4, right? So this is at least his second. I think this is just his second this season. But that's just an example of basically how chaotic the NA race is right now, where like Gavin won an international, and like all these really insane players, where it's just like kind of crazy to think about 2 regionals is not like securing you. 2 regional wins is not securing you a Day 2. And of course, locals coming back is going to throw a wrench into that whole thing as well. But anyway, we've still got a bunch of Series 3 coming up. I found out
Regulation
today.
C, Brendan.
Regulation C coming up. I found out today that NAIC actually is Regulation C, which is exciting. It seems like it's kind of an interesting format, with the exception of Fisher or Tinglu. But yeah, I
almost adjusted during the 4 to 5 Fisher game. I just didn't want to broach that topic yet.
It's a little controversial, but I think there's a little bit of a break in regionals.
Yeah, EUIC is in like a week and a half from the time of recording this. It's 2 weeks after Fort Wayne, and then 2 weeks after EUIC is the next regional, I believe. It might be 3 weeks actually.
I don't know. Don't ask me.
I think Portland is the first weekend of May.
Okay.
So that might be 3, yeah. But we have UIC, we have more from Fort Wayne, we have Sydney as well. I believe Sydney was streamed. So we got plenty of material.
Cool. So we'll stick to I always mess this up. Bi-weekly.
Yes.
I always mix up bi-weekly and semi-weekly. Bi-weekly episodes. So we will be back in 2 weeks. As always, thanks for listening / watching. You can find us in the YouTube comments. You can find us on social media at MrB.46VGC or at MajorBowman_. If you have any requests for matches, we could do some Regulation C. If there's like a really old match that you want us to do, we've got a touch of break in the action that we might be able to squeeze one of those in, which would be pretty fun. But we probably only do that by request. But anyway, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So again, thanks for watching. We appreciate you coming by. We've got a lot of Regulation C action coming up over the next couple months. So stick with us.